in the Shire of Dundas and pay our respects to their elders past and present. At 1.2 we have Councillor Hogan, Councillor Maloney, Councillor Brown and the Deputy CEO attending by electronic means from Norseman. Item 2, any financial interests?
Nil.
No.
I have a financial interest in 10.1.1. Any proximity?
Nil.
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
10.1.1. My brother owns 50% of the company, but I have no dealings with them at all.
Okay. Impartiality?
Nil.
Partiality, is it?
No, that's just the next one down the line.
Okay. Any gifts?
Nil.
Fortunately not.
You give me any tips?
Attendance is recorded. Item 4, application for leave of absence. 4.1, we have the leave of absence application for Councillor Maloney. Recommendation is on page 7.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor Warner, thank you.
I'll second it.
Councillor McLeod. Anybody opposed to that?
No,
No.
nobody deserves leave.
So, all in favour then?
No.
Yeah.
I can do.
Item 5, we have no response to previous public questions. Item 6, public question time. Right. Okie doke, we will move on. Item 7, 7.1, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? The amendments?
No.
Everybody happy? Have a recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 25th of February 2025 be confirmed as a true and accurate record. Those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 8, reports of committees. 8.1.1, the GVROC. We had a GVROC meeting on the 21st of February to consider the State Council agenda, and our next GVROC meeting will be held in Esperance next week, the 28th of March. Item 8.1.2, the Walga State Council meeting was held on the 5th of March at the Walga building, and that was our first meeting in the new revamped 3rd floor, which is very nice. So if any councillors are in Perth and need to do any council business, you may use that facility. We considered climate change advocacy position, which was sent back for review, a waste management policy, and the next State Council meeting will be held on the 7th of May, hosted by the City of Swan. 8.1.3, Regional Road Group. We haven't had a meeting yet, but I believe there will be one scheduled for April. 8.1.4, the Roadwise. We haven't had a meeting. 8.1.5, the LEMAC will be on the 2nd of April. 8.1.6, we had a coastal management strategy meeting on the 13th of March, where we considered the draft matters to include in the strategy. The Shire has accepted the order for the shack blocks. Now drafting the individual lease agreements to come to the committee and then to council for review and acceptance. That is that. I have item 9, no announcements. Item 10, 10.1.1, I have an interest, so I will vacate the chair and hand over to Deputy President.
Okay, so 10.1.1, proposed amendment 13 to the Shire of Dundas Local Planning Scheme number 2. The recommendation is on page 13. Need someone to move that? I'll move that. seconder?
Seconded. This one here.
Okay, anybody like to speak for that? No. Anybody against? So the recommendation is that the council is to adopt the 1 to 6 as written on the page. Those in favour? John? Councillor Nye? Thank you.
I don't think I can vote on it, can
Carried.
Sorry, I did vote.
Right.
Get me again.
We'll get President back.
Just let everybody know that it may be a bias vote. That's it. That's it.
Oh, I'm right.
What's going on back there?
Something to do with the land here in town.
What it's to do with renting.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, it's nil. Okay, item 10.1.2, Western Green Energy Hub Environmental Scoping Document. Councillors in Norseman, there's a lot of noise coming through from your end. Thank you. Item 10.1.2, Western Green Energy Hub Environmental Scoping Document. The recommendation is on page 19.
I'll move that
Can I
recommendation.
ask a question before I, will it cost us any money?
Hang on 1 second, Councillor Hogan. A second. Councillor McLeod, thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Warner?
No.
Councillor McLeod? Councillor Hogan, you have a question.
Will it cost us any money?
To do what?
Getting involved in all this type of thing?
We're not involved in it, Councillor Hogan. We're just putting up some extra considerations for the environmental protection scoping document for the assessment of the project. We're not involved in the project at all.
Okay, thank you.
Would anybody like to speak against that? Okay, I have a recommendation that the Shire of Dundas Council supports the request to add the identified concerns and recommendations to the Western Green Energy Hub environmental scoping document and authorises the CEO to formally submit this response to the Environmental Protection Authority for inclusion and consideration. Those in favour? Thank you. 10.2.1, receive the information bulletin. Recommendation is on page 20. Councillor McLeod, thank you.
I'll second that.
Councillor Warner, thank you. We have a recommendation that Council receive the monthly Councillors' Information Bulletin for the period ending 18th of March 2025. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.2.2, the financial statements for the period ending 31st of January 2025. The recommendation is on page 21.
I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you.
Yeah, seconded.
Councillor Hogan, thank you.
Cloud and water.
Anything to tell us, Mr CEO?
No, it's Councillor, if you have any direct questions regarding the financials, but it's in papers relating, so if you want to go through it and have a squiz or ask a question now, we can answer it or put it in writing to myself for clarification.
Yes.
Any questions, councillors? No. We have a recommendation that the Shire of Dundas financial statements for the period ending 31st of January 2025 be accepted. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.2.3, appointment of council committees presiding and deputy presiding member. Recommendation is on page 22.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor
We'll
Warner.
read that now.
And second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillor McLeod. Would you like to speak to that, councillor Warner?
No.
Councillor McLeod? Anybody like to speak against it? Okay, we have an officer recommendation that council appoint Councillor John Maloney as the presiding member and Councillor Chantal McLeod as the deputy presiding member of the Shire of Dundas Roadwise Committee, Councillor Sharon Brown as the presiding member and President Loreen Bonza as the deputy presiding member of the Shire of Dundas Local Emergency Management Committee, President Loreen Bonza as the presiding member and Councillor Sharon Brown as the deputy presiding member of the Shire of Dundas Coastal Strategy Steering Committee, Councillor Hogan as the presiding member and Councillor Chantal McLeod as the deputy presiding member of the Shire of Dundas Local Business and Tourism Committee, and Councillor Sharon Warner as the presiding member and President Loreen Bonza as the deputy presiding member of the Shire of Dundas Environmental and Community Health Committee. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.2.4, the local laws review. That recommendation is on page 27.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor Warner, thank you. And Councillor McLeod, would you like to speak to that, Councillor Warner?
No, thank you.
Councillor McLeod. Anybody like to speak against that recommendation? Okay, we have a recommendation that Council 1 notes the submissions received for the Shire of Dundas Dogs local law. 2 agrees that the local law review process has been finalised and resolves not to make any changes to A, the Shire of Dundas Dogs local law, and B, the Shire of Dundas activities on thoroughfares and public places and trading local law 2016. 3 repeals the Shire of Dundas Norseman Cemeteries local law number 2. 4 commences the lawmaking process for the Shire of Dundas Cemeteries Local Law 2025 with the purpose and effect of the local law being purpose to provide for the orderly management of the Norseman Cemetery and to create offences for inappropriate behaviour within the cemetery grounds, and the effect to ensure compliance by all persons engaged in the administration of the cemetery, burying deceased in the cemetery or otherwise providing services to or making use of the cemetery. 5 authorises the Chief Executive Officer to carry out the lawmaking process under section 3.123 of the Local Government Act 95 by A, giving local public notice of the law, and B, giving a copy of the local law and public notice to the Minister for Local Government. And 6 notes that the Chief Executive Officer, after the close of the public consultation period, will submit a report to the Council on any received on the proposed local law to enable the Council to consider the submissions made and to determine whether to make the local law in accordance with section 3.124 of the Local Government 95, and 7 authorises the use of the common seal by President Loreen Bonza and CEO Peter Fitchett where required in the above local law processes. Those in favour? Councillor Hogan. Thank you. Item 10.2.5, use of the common seal for parking local law. The recommendation is on page 29.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor Warner, thank you.
I'll second that.
Second it.
Councillor McLeod beat you to it, Councillor Brown.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to that, Councillor
No,
Warner?
thank you.
Councillor McLeod? Anybody like to speak against that? We have a recommendation that Council delegate the use of the common seal by President Loreen Bonza and CEO Peter Fitchett for the Shire of Dundas Parking Local Law 2025. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.2.6, the 24-25 budget review. Recommendation, there are 2. First one on page 33.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor Warner, thank you.
I'll second it.
Councillor McLeod, thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor
No,
Warner?
thank you.
Councillor McLeod?
No, thank you.
Anybody like to speak against that recommendation? So we have a recommendation that council adopt by absolute majority the 24-25 mid-year budget review as attached. Those in favour? Thank you. And recommendation 2, a mover.
I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Warner. And second?
I'll second it.
Councillor McLeod, thank you. Would you like to speak to that one, Councillor
No,
Warner?
thank you.
Councillor McLeod? Anybody like to speak against that recommendation? So we have a recommendation that council adopt by absolute majority the following budget amendments to the 2024-2025 adopted annual budget. There is a table of changes there, amendments. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.2.7, the appointment of Audit and Risk Committee. I would like to move a one-word amendment to that recommendation. In part 3, to remove the word endorse and change that out to review. I have a seconder for that.
I'll second that.
Yep.
Councillor Warner beat you to it, Councillor Maloney, thank you. So the reason for that change is that there's a couple of things in the terms of reference that I think require some clarification, because it gives us a couple of things to do that I'm not quite sure is actually in our remit to do. So we'll just review that, but it won't change the intent of the recommendation. Councillor Warner, would you like to speak to that? No? Anybody like to speak against that? So we have a recommendation that council rename the Shire of Dundas Audit Committee to the Audit and Risk Committee. 2, appoint Councillor Lee Bonza, Councillor Sharon Warner, Councillor J.E.P. Hogan, Councillor John Maloney, Councillor Sharon Brown and Councillor Chantal McLeod to the Shire of Dundas Audit and Risk Committee. 3, review the Shire of Dundas Audit and Risk Committee terms of reference as attached in papers relating. 4, authorise the CEO to commence the expression of interest process for nominations of suitably qualified external persons to the Shire of Dundas Audit and Risk Committee. A report will be presented to Council at the close of the expression of interest process. And 5, note that on the successful appointment of the external members, Council will commence the process to appoint the presiding member for the committee. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.2.8, the compliance audit return for 2024. Recommendation is on page 38.
I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Warner. In second?
I'll second it.
Councillor McLeod, thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Warner?
thank you.
No, Councillor McLeod? Anybody like to speak against it? Anybody have any questions in relation to the compliance audit return? No? We have a recommendation that Council 1 adopt the finalised 2024 compliance audit return as contained in the papers relating, and 2, authorise the Shire President and the Chief Executive Officer to sign the compliance audit return for submission to the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.2.9, the local government elections cost estimate. Recommendation is on page 41.
I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Warner. And second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Warner?
No, thank you.
Councillor McLeod? Anybody like to speak against that? So we have a recommendation that Council 1 accepts the cost estimate of $11,244 ex GST provided by the WAEC for the 2025 local government election administration, noting that final costs may vary depending on actual expenses incurred, and 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to formally notify WAEC in writing of the Council's decision and proceed with the necessary documentation for WAEC to manage the 2025 local government election process. Those in favour?
Patrick.
Thank you. Item 10.3.1, Officers' Reports. Recommendation is on page 42.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor Warner, thank you. And second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Officers, anything to add to your reports?
Nothing further from me, thank you, Madam President.
Works and Services Manager, anything to add? No, thank you. We have a recommendation that the Shire of Dundas Council receive the Works and Services, Youth and Recreation Services and Woodlands Cultural Community and Visitor Centre reports as contained in papers relating. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.3.2, a request to keep additional dogs on a residential property. That recommendation is on page 43.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor Warner, thank you. And second?
I'll second that.
Councillor McLeod, thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Warner?
No, thank you.
Councillor McLeod? Anybody like to speak against that?
No.
We have a recommendation that Council grant approval for the housing of 4 dogs at 56 Robert Street, Norseman, dependent on dog registration and appropriate fencing being in place. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.3.3, the Shire of Dundas motion to the National General Assembly of the Australian Local Government Association, federal funding to support local government in advancing the circular economy. That recommendation is on page 45. Councillor McLeod, thank you. And second?
I'll second that.
Councillor Warner, thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor McLeod?
No.
Councillor Warner?
No.
Anybody like to speak against that? Okay, we have a recommendation. The motion to ALGA. This proposal aims to 1, establish a dedicated long-term funding stream to support local governments in developing circular economy initiatives that drive waste reduction, job creation and sustainable resource management. 2, ensure the funding is non-competitive and allocated through a direct formula-based model similar to the Roads to Recovery program, allowing councils to plan and implement waste management strategies effectively without the uncertainty of competitive grants. The recommendation is that the Shire of Dundas Council endorses the submission of this resolution to the 2025 ALGA National General Assembly, advocating for a dedicated circular economy fund to provide financial support for local governments, enabling the development of regional recycling programs, innovative waste reduction strategies and sustainable material recovery initiatives that will drive economic and environmental benefits for communities nationwide. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.3.4, Shire of Dundas motion to the National General Assembly of the Australian Local Government Association, local government representation in intergovernmental forums. That recommendation is on page 46.
I'll move that recommendation.
Councillor Warner, thank you. In second?
I'll second it.
Councillor McLeod, thank you. Would you like to speak to that,
No, thank
Councillor Warner? Councillor McLeod?
Second.
Anybody like to speak against that? We have a recommendation. The motion to ALGA. The National General Assembly calls on the Australian Government to ensure permanent local government representation from each state and territory in intergovernmental forums, including the National Cabinet and key ministerial councils, to strengthen cooperation between all levels of government and ensure local government perspectives are included in national decision-making. The recommendation is that the Shire of Dundas Council endorses the submission of this resolution to the 2025 ALGA National General Assembly, advocating for the reinstatement of permanent local government representation in intergovernmental forums to enhance policy coordination, strengthen national decision-making and ensure regional and remote councils have a voice in shaping federal policies. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10.3.5, the Metcash franchise, moving from IGA to Village Grocer branding. That recommendation is on page 50.
I'll move.
Councillor Warner, thank you. In second,
I'll second that.
Councillor McLeod, thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Warner?
No, thank you.
Councillor McLeod?
Yeah, I actually think it's a really good move.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Anyone like to speak against it? Do any of our officers have anything to add?
Yes, through the chair, this, given our community interest in the local supermarket to provide local solutions and to actually meet the needs of our community, the Village Grocer branding provides more flexibility for council to put some local initiatives in that are relevant to a supermarket in a rural and remote location, especially when we think about the supply chain that goes out to the South Australian border. So stepping away from the IGA parameters, I guess, the Village Grocer will allow for more flexibility to service not only our local residents in Norseman, but our remote residents out along the Air Highway.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation that Council 1 approve the transition of the Norseman IGA to Village Grocer branding while remaining part of the Metcash franchise. 2, authorise the executive team to commence the rebranding process, including making the necessary operational adjustments and coordinating with Metcash to ensure continued supply chain support. And 3, approve the initiation of community consultation to engage with residents and stakeholders to ensure the transition aligns with community needs and expectations. Those in favour? Thank you. We have no elected members' motions. We have no late items. So our next council meeting will be held in Norseman at 6 p.m. on the 15th of April. We have no further business, so I'll declare the meeting closed at, not here, is it? 5:45.